Sciography, Sci-Fi's original monthly documentary series. Access to Sci-Fi's greatest shows that only Sci-Fi could get. This month on Sciography, Quantum Leap.
We're going back in time and we're going to fix things that went wrong, and we are going to change the outcome.
How? Who the hell knows?
I've been pregnant. I've been a trapeze artist. I've been many, many things.
Sciography, coming up next. Part of the summer of Sci-Fi.
This man has played everyone from female soul singer. Yeah. And he's large. He's large, which means he's extremely famous. To a chimpanzee, to Lee Harvey Oswald. Yeah. Are you all big fans? God. From Quantum Leap, Scott Bakula.
The story of Quantum Leap begins more than 40 years ago. It's the 1950s, and everyone's jazzed about hula hoops and rock and roll. But in Cokeburg, Pennsylvania, everyone's jazzed about coal. So what does a coal mining town have to do with Quantum Leap? Simple. This is where Quantum Leap creator Don Belisario grows up and sees how history affects the lives of ordinary people. It's these types of people who later appear in Quantum Leap.
I recreated people from the town. I had actors portray them. I told them how their accents were, how they spoke, what they did, and they were portraying the people that I remembered.
But that happens much later. Don may have been inspired, but he wasn't about to dig coal for the rest of his life. So he joins the Marines, where in 1959, he meets Lee Harvey Oswald.
I was in the Marine Corps with Lee Harvey Oswald and had met him and had some words with him.
Now, Belisario is no psychic, so he could not have known that Oswald would assassinate Kennedy 5 years later. But what if he could have known? Would he have been able to put right what Oswald did wrong? Sound familiar? This is the theme of Quantum Leap. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. After the military, Don goes on to a successful career in advertising when, at the age of 41, he quits his job and heads to Hollywood. He soon finds work writing for TV shows like Baa, Black Sheep, and Battlestar Galactica. But it's not until 1980 that Don hits gold when he creates Magnum P.I. It is on this show that Don meets dancer-turned-actress Deborah Pratt. And as the story often goes in Hollywood, the actress marries the producer. Don is happy. Deborah is happy. Magnum is a hit, and the kid from Cokeburg has earned Hollywood's respect.
Don, was one of the big guys. So that when Don puts a show on the air, you don't have the minions out there saying, well, you have to change this, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, because Don is Don.
So now it's the late 80s. Magnum's coming to an end, and a series of films called Back to the Future has everyone talking about time travel. Don Belisario may not have had a flux capacitor, but he was considering doing some time travel of his own.
I was reading a book called Coming of Age in the Milky Way, which explained man's search for answers in the universe. Explained about Einstein's theory of relativity. It dealt a little bit with the possibility of time travel. And it also talked about a quantum leap.
Einstein talked about the fact that time and space is limited. That means that you can't get into any space unless you went into somebody, into their life.
Cool idea. But how do you turn this into a TV show?
I could have a character leaping through time. He could be going from one situation to another every week.
It kind of evolved into this interesting concept of what would you do when you got there?
In every time travel show you see, oh, if we change history, you'll kill your own grandfather, you'll never be born. That's not true. We can go back and we can change anything we want in the past, as long as what we change isn't in and of itself general knowledge.
So Don begins working on a concept for a time travel show. Maybe not the best choice, since past time travel shows like Time Tunnel and Voyagers were canceled after only one season. But Belisario wasn't about to let that stand in his way. He created 5 rules that would allow his time traveler Sam and his guide Al to avoid the pitfalls from time travel shows of the past. Rule number 1, limit the time travel.
I thought, I don't want to go back into the past too far, because to do that, the suspense of belief becomes too much with a sophisticated audience today. You know, you have him walking around in Rome with Julius Caesar, doesn't work. And that's when I came up with the idea of limiting his ability to travel in time to his own lifespan.
Rule number 2, give the time traveler an invisible link to the present.
Al was a hologram, therefore Al could not interact with anyone in any of the stories. He could only be seen and heard by Sam.
Rule number 3, put the time traveler in someone else's body.
While we saw him as Sam Beckett, everyone else saw him as the person he leaped into. And the only time he saw himself as he looked to everyone else was when he looked in a mirror.
Rule number 4, give the time traveler a purpose.
He could only leap again when he had put right what once went wrong. And so he was always seeking what that was.
And rule number 5, Sam cannot leap into anyone famous. So we've got a guy who time travels through his own lifetime, talks to someone who isn't really there, can only see how others see him when he looks in a mirror, and can't leave until he fixes something that went wrong. Try explaining that to the big boys at NBC, Chairman Brandon Tartikoff and President Warren Littlefield.
I remember when Don Belisario actually came into NBC and pitched us this strange idea. And I think our first response was, huh? And he said, no, let me take you through this slowly. It's a little more complex than a buddy comedy. I want you to just give me your imagination. I'm going to take you on an adventure. And it's called Quantum Leap.
Brandon had me explain it to him, and then he said, explain it to me again so my mother will understand it. And I explained it to him again. He still didn't understand it.
Whose brainchild is this, yours?
Come on, guys. It's not that tough. Let's try again.
It was sort of an anthology without being an anthology.
I always considered it a drama.
It was science fiction.
I never considered Quantum Leap a sci-fi show.
I don't think I've ever successfully explained the show to anybody.
Okay, so maybe it is a bit confusing. But before Don left the meeting, he sold the concept. All Belisario needed now was to cast the 2 lead roles. First, he needed Dr. Sam Beckett, the brilliant, sensitive do-gooder stuck in the past. Before gracing the pages of Playgirl magazine, Scott Bakula was just a theater guy from New York trying to break into television. He finally got his chance.
All this sweet stuff's really getting to us, ma'am. It was right around the time when Michael Jackson was doing all of his triangle choreography. I was the lead guy, dancing and singing my way through the madness.
Scott was looking to do a little more than sing and dance. But Hollywood was a tough place, and Bakula had already been part of 2 TV flops, Gung Ho and Eisenhower and Lutz. His luck was about to change when he was called in to read for the part of Sam Beckett. Scott's life mirrored Sam's. Both grew up in a small town, had conservative upbringings, played sports, and loved music. They even have the same initials. It was like Sam Beckett leaped into Scott Bakula's body.
It was very easy to kind of transfer some of my own Midwestern ideals and certainly understand where Sam Beckett came from in terms of farm country, because my grandmother's family were farm people in middle Missouri. You know, I understood that kind of stock, that country stock, and that kind of loyalty and deep commitment to not only to each other but to the land.
Bakula was a perfect fit, and Belisario knew it.
As soon as the door closed, I said, "Get him! Don't let him get away." I didn't want to show my enthusiasm and have the price go up, you know. So I said, "Get him," because he is Sam Beckett.
Scott was in. Now Belisario needed to cast Al, Sam Beckett's womanizing, sex-charged sidekick, stuck in the present. Dean Stockwell is a screen legend who's been acting since he was a kid. But becoming a legend isn't always easy. Dean takes a break from acting in the 1960s to hang out with Jack Nicholson and Dennis Hopper. But when he comes back to work, no one is hiring.
I had a stretch from about 1965 until 1980 where I couldn't get arrested. I was able to get work doing dinner theater around the country, which is for washed-up people that have a name value. And it was very embarrassing. I finally got to a point where I was not only about ready, I was giving up the business.
It was time for Dean to say goodbye, so he packed up the car and placed a farewell ad in Variety. And that's when the phone started ringing. By 1988, Dean was back. Blue Velvet was a hit, and Married to the Mob earned him an Oscar nomination. But Dean was looking for a place he could stay a while. He wanted a TV series.
When Dean and Scott got together, there was just a spark of chemistry between them. And you knew the moment you saw them, that's them, that's them.
The recipe was complete. There was nothing left to do but yell action.
We're in good shape. He has no lines in this scene.
Speedy. And action.
On March 26, 1989, Quantum Leap debuted on NBC. The world was introduced to Mr. Sensitive, Mr. Libido.
Come on, she's probably all of 17.
Well, she looks like she skipped a couple of grades. In fact, I think she's ready for graduate school.
And a time travel experiment gone haywire.
I mean, just the very idea that, you know, someone could leap into other people's bodies was something we'd never seen before.
I was spending the weekend at a friend's house, and a bunch of us watched the pilot, and at the end, we literally burst into applause. We loved it so much, and we couldn't wait for the next episode.
It kind of expanded the boundaries of what the mainstream would consider traditional sci-fi, because prior to that, the last 10, 15 years before, it was pretty much Star Trek Next Generation, or nothing. And, you know, this kind of opened up kind of the interpretation, the definition of what qualified as a sci-fi show in prime time.
Quantum Leap is on its way. Over 23 million people see the pilot. Despite its success, NBC moves the show 2 times. By the 5th episode, the audience has been cut in half. But NBC isn't looking for excuses, and Quantum Leap's great start may end up being its downfall. So the Quantum Leap pilot airs, and everything is looking good until NBC moves the show, causing the ratings to plummet. But Quantum Leap creator Don Belisario was a pro. He knew exactly what to do. Controversy equals ratings.
There's got to be some mistake.
It was no mistake. Don sent Sam into a black man in the pre-civil rights year of 1955.
You have to give Don Belisario lots of credit for being able to pull that off at that time. In the early 90s, this was not a time where controversy was smiled upon.
What in God's name's wrong with being called a nigger?
Maybe it's just a little too close to nigger.
It really dealt with social issues and racism and what it would feel like for a non-African American to walk in those shoes.
The Color of Truth worked. Over 15 million viewers tuned in to see the episode. But it takes more than controversy to make a great show. It was Belisario's sci-fi devices that tied it all together. The first was the imaging chamber. When Al enters the imaging chamber, he is transported to wherever Sam has time travel to. But he's not really with Sam. Just his image is there.
Al was supposed to have images live connect to where Sam had left so that he could project himself in as a hologram. How? Who the hell knows?
Sam leaps into different people from different time periods. But when Sam leaps into a person, where does that person go? Belisario's answer was the waiting room.
A favorite book of mine over the years was The Magus. And in The Magus, there was a waiting room, a room in the woods that just said the waiting room, which is where the soul or body of the person he leaped into went.
Time travel can often be confusing. So Belisario invented Ziggy, a massive talking supercomputer that figured out why, where, and when Sam leaped. So Sam is in the past, and Al is in the imaging chamber. Belisario still needed to figure out how to make them communicate with Ziggy, who wasn't exactly mobile. Enter the hand link.
Al is to have this hand link. It's how he talked to Ziggy, the computer. And Don's instructions to me were, I want something designed that nobody's ever seen before.
Belisario was a tough sale. The hand link went through 7 designs before he finally found one Don liked.
I watched my 7-year-old daughter on the living room floor, and she's playing with Legos. And I'm watching her put these blocks together, and I thought, wait a minute. What if I just glued blocks together? Colored plexiglass blocks. I went in, I showed it to Don, he said, that's it. That's the one we want.
Quantum Leap had it all. Time travel, great stories, a legendary hologram, and a high-tech communicator made from Legos. But still, NBC was thinking of axing it from the fall lineup.
It sort of became known that the show was kind of on the bubble. Would it be renewed or not? And so everybody started writing letters to the networks.
And they had such a response from the fans that they second thought it. It's one of those great times when fan letters and fan mail really did impress the network.
In fact, NBC was so impressed with the response that they picked up Quantum Leap and gave it a home on Wednesday nights at 10. It was a perfect time for Don to spread his wings and show them what Quantum could do.
The second season, the show really started to hit its stride and expand into all kinds of areas. I've been pregnant. I've been a trapeze artist. I've been an American Indian taking his grandfather to die in the burial grounds. I've been an understudy in a road company of La Mancha. I've leaped home. I've played football, basketball, been 6 or 7 different black people. I've been Jewish. Wow. I've been many, many things.
I used to say by year 3 or 4, the writers were trying to kill me. It wasn't like when at the interview they said, now, before we give you this part, guys, you know, can you swim? Can you hike? Can you climb mountains? Can you rope a cow? Can you hang from a trapeze?
So Bakula handled anything the writers threw at him, until he was thrown a curveball. Well, actually, a bra.
If you ever watch the show very closely, you'll notice that Scott never wore falsies as a woman, and he never wore wigs, because the premise was that he was leaping into a woman's body, and if the woman had hair, she never wore wigs, and if she had breasts, she never wore falsies.
Scott was a little afraid of it at first in some ways. Then he got to like it. Then he grew tired of wearing those high-heel shoes.
This is Scott's famous Quanta Lagusta gown, Carmen Miranda dress that he wore when he sang with Dean in Miss Deep South. And Scott was kind of thick through here for a girl, and so to really establish the fact that he wasn't, we even gave him golden balls.
Okay, Scott's gold balls are funny, but Belisario knew the importance of balancing the comedy with drama. So he used these episodes to tackle important issues like rape, sexual harassment, and teenage pregnancy.
We tried to make every episode really deal with a theme, whether it was civil rights or whatever, women's rights or whatever it might be, prejudice. And it was a very conscious thing. It was like, how can we find something to deal with?
We touched the human emotion. Our shows always had an emotional core. Quantum Leap always had a heart.
So Scott's in drag, the fans are hooked, and the show's found a home. Time to turn it up a notch. Like his own marriage, Don decides to explore interracial relationships in the episode Black on White on Fire.
Sam leapt into a young black doctor, medical student, and in love with a white girl.
Not only were they in love, they were caught in the middle of the Watts riots.
And they were, in love with each other and kissing each other. The fact that Scott Bakula is Caucasian, kissing another Caucasian person, wasn't enough because of what the show portrayed, in the sense that when he looked in the mirror, he was a young black doctor.
A black guy kissing a white girl. No big deal, right? Wrong. The network and sponsors freaked.
I remember very specifically we had to go into the network and fight with standards and practices about this kissing scene. And we had sponsors pull, and if I'm not mistaken, a couple of places in the South didn't air the show.
Not only that, it appears it was somewhat prophetic. Nearly 30 years after the Watts riots, and less than 1 year after the episode aired, L.A. again breaks out into a race-related riot. But not even a riot could stop Quantum Leap's controversial storylines. In Running for Honor, Sam leaps into a track star in a Navy college and must stop his gay ex-roommate from being murdered by a group of bigoted cadets.
That was an issue that at that time wasn't being done on television. Advertisers threatened to pull out of that show.
What? I don't ever remember seeing you cross your legs that way before.
Remember, this is 1991, pre-Ellen and pre-Will and Grace. Belisario was definitely rocking the boat, but the fans were watching Don's back and flooded NBC with mail. Despite the naysayers, over 17 million people watch Running for Honor.
I'm a relatively liberal person in terms of how I deal with other people and how I feel about people's rights to be who they want to be and do what they want to do, as long as they don't, it doesn't hurt somebody else. But this just constantly reinforced those feelings.
So Don didn't shy away from controversy. He went right at it. But even the best flag wavers need a good laugh once in a while. Or maybe a good scare. The Boogeyman episode had both.
In the episode, there was a goat who was supposed to be like a symbol for the devil. So we go on the location, Scott. We're walking around, do-de-do-do-do. One of the location guys goes, I just talked to the owner. He told me about this place. And we go, no, what? And he goes, it's haunted. We go, no. He goes, oh, yeah. No, there's supposed to be a ghost in this house. So we all start going, okay, fine. We're doing a Halloween episode, ghost. Then we walk around the back and hear this, meh, and there's like a goat in the backyard of this house. Now people are like freaking out a little bit.
But we don't actually say the title of that episode. It's Bad Luck.
After the episode aired, we got all this weird fan mail coming in where people telling stories like, my VCR ran backwards, or just as soon as the episode came on, it blanked out. Weird things have been attributed to it and associated with it.
While fans are figuring out what went wrong with their VCRs, Sam was meeting a famous author.
Stevie
King.
Hey, Cujo!
This was what Belisario called a kiss with history. It's when Sam says or does something in the past that eventually becomes part of pop culture. So Sam's influencing the future, Don's predicting the future, and behind the scenes, the network is ruining Quantum Leap's future. NBC decides to move the show back to Friday nights, the same place it failed a year and a half earlier. Once again, Quantum Leap's salvation would come from an unlikely source. So Scott's finally got a hit. Dean's found a home. Belisario is raking in the dough. And Deborah has worked her way up to executive producer. But no one is more excited than the fans.
It's great. It's got humor, and then it's also serious at the same time. Plus, Scott Bakula's real cute, too. Quantum Leap is my favorite show. See, I just love it.
But everything's not as peachy as it seems. The other networks are kicking NBC's butt. Remember, it's only 1990. There's no ER, no Friends, no Frasier, and Seinfeld isn't a hit yet. NBC was desperate.
We found that Quantum Leap could recruit its own audience almost wherever it went. So if you're a network, how do you say I love you? One of the ways you say it is, we believe in you, we have a problem, we know you can turn the lights on. And we used Quantum Leap to do that.
So where did they shine the light this time? How about the worst time slot on TV? Friday nights at 8. Brilliant move, considering it's the same place it failed a year and a half earlier.
This show is never going to work on Friday or Saturday night. It's just, the audience that's going to watch this show is out on a Friday night.
When Quantum Leap moved to Friday nights, unfortunately there was a drop in the ratings.
Smooth move. Now Belisario was backed into a corner. There was only one thing left to do. Unleash the fans.
Don Belisario is probably one of the first producers to realize the power of the internet along with the fan base. And so whenever they needed something done, like write letters to the network to get a better time slot, write letters to the network to get it renewed, write letters to the sponsors to get it sponsored, Don would put out the word.
The most rabid fans are sci-fi fans. And when they get a show they hook onto it big time.
Okay, sci-fi fans are hardcore, and Quantum Leap fans are no exception. But come on, they're just fans, right? What could they really do?
We started writing Warren Littlefield, and bless the fans, we wrote, and he got over 50,000 letters.
Recently, I've received a few letters from fans of Quantum Leap demanding I move Quantum Leap back to its original Wednesday night time slot. Okay, you win!
Quantum Leap leaps back home to Wednesday, March 6th.
There! I gave you what you want. Now, please, stop writing.
Power of the pen. It really is. Every single letter represents 100 people who didn't write.
The kind of magical connection that the show had with people all over the planet is what kept it alive, made it successful all over the world.
Everyone was starting to notice just how amazing these Quantum Leap fans were. Even the hippest guy on late-night television couldn't ignore the mania.
From Quantum Leap, Scott Bakula. This guy's stuff is crazy large. You got these quantum quarterly things, and your big, and your all this. Tell them about this stuff. Well, and it's not you, it's your fans.
The subscriber base of Quantum Quarterly was in the thousands. We had subscribers from all over the U.S.
So the fans are writing newsletters, flooding the internet, and keeping the show alive. But they weren't done yet.
In 1991, we realized that Dean Stockwell, with his huge, long career in the industry, did not have a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Next thing we knew, we had the money, and on Leap Day, 1992, Dean got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
I only wish, and I've said this many times before, that you all would have the experience of knowing this man the way I do. He's one of the gentlest spirits that I've ever met, and I just feel so privileged that I've had a few moments to share with him.
This came about largely because of the fans of Quantum Leap.
Love you.
Oh, thanks. I love you, too.
Share the love, baby. Wake the kids. Call your mom. Tell your neighbors. Quantum Leap is coming to a convention hall near you.
What am I doing wrong? I can hardly get Joe to come here every night. He's got a convention somewhere.
I was reading about Trekkie convention. And I had been getting all these letters from the Leapers and said, you know what, we should have a convention. We have fans, we have Leapers. And everyone went, oh, no, nobody's going to come to it.
Man, were they wrong. Everybody went. Maybe it was a fashion show. Or was it the special effects demo?
First thing we do is that we've got this like blue glow that goes on it. Another element that we have is the electricity that kind of goes from top to bottom. And then we have what we call the moire pattern, which is that all that star stuff that comes out.
Or the boys themselves.
This question's for Dean.
Thank you.
Dean, are you an angel?
It was Leaper heaven. But that was only the beginning. Soon there were Quantum Leap calendars, books, and albums. Belisario began talks for a movie, an animated series, and finally, the Quantum Leap comic book.
You don't ever go in expecting like you're going to end up being a comic book guy.
Right.
You know, I mean, when I'm 12, I want to grow up and be on a comic book.
And you look good. A lot of times they put you in a comic book and you look goofy, but you look... You look real good.
Oh, you're kind.
And the thing I like is you know, you put some brothers in it, and that's real important. See the brother right there?
Right about now, Don's thinking nothing can go wrong. So, of course, something does. NBC chairman and Quantum Leap fan Brandon Tartikoff leaves NBC. Warren Littlefield becomes the new head honcho. And before he can unpack, Quantum Leap is moved a 7th time.
Why don't you stop moving the show around?
They did jump us around. When you jump a show around, it can get lost. But the show had enough staying power to even rise above that.
Maybe so, but this is Warren Littlefield, not Brandon Tartikoff. This time, Quantum Leap is moved to Tuesday, squaring off against the monster hit, Full House. But Belisario has a plan, and it starts with going after the most controversial filmmaker of the decade, Oliver Stone. So Dean has his star, Scott's in a comic book, and even Arsenio is impressed by Quantum Leap mania. But NBC is unimpressed. The show is moved for the 7th time. This time it's pitted against the Olsen twins and their mega hit Full House. But Belisario wasn't afraid. He had a plan, and the first thing to do is go after Oliver Stone's film, JFK.
I saw that, and it was so full of crap and BS that I turned around and said, you know what? I knew Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm gonna do something to show, you know, what really happened.
What a challenge, you know. Here's Don Belisario against Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone does the feature, and Don does TV. And Oliver Stone writes that, and Don writes this. It was like a direct challenge, you know, feature against TV.
Considering JFK cost $40 million, this is quite a challenge. How could Quantum Leap compete? Time to break a rule. Rule number 5, to be exact. Sam Beckett is about to leap into someone famous, and that someone is Lee Harvey Oswald.
Belisario makes the point quite forcefully that Oswald acted alone, as we see him in his little sniper's nest in Dallas killing JFK. That kind of stuff just wasn't done on TV back then.
Now, Kennedy's assassination happened in real life, so Don couldn't change that, but he did leave his own footnote in the history books by having Sam present at the assassination.
Just as he was about to fire the gun, he leaped into the Secret Service agent who saved Jackie Kennedy. And we then found out that what had happened in history originally was that Jackie Kennedy was also killed at that assassination. See, I mean, that's how you can change history, and no one can argue with you about it.
Next, since Sam Beckett never had a nemesis, Belisario decided to introduce the evil Leaper. If Sam was the yin, she was the yang. Her job was to put wrong what went right. It was good versus evil. So Sam's leapt into Lee Harvey Oswald and was chased by the evil leaper. What else did Don have in mind? How about more famous people? First, Dr. Ruth, then Elvis, and why not hang out with Marilyn Monroe for an episode? The fans love Belisario's new additions, but Quantum Leap's ratings are mediocre at best. Full House continues to dominate Tuesday nights, and everyone goes into the final episode of the season not knowing if it would be the last. If this was to be the final episode, what better place to set it in than the town that inspired it?
I recreated as perfectly as possible the bar that my dad owned in a coal mining town called Cookburg, Pennsylvania in 1953, where I was a young man.
It had this very strange, surreal quality. I mean, down to the pig's knuckles on the counter in a jar.
He even had family pictures on the wall, just like they were back then.
The actor that I picked to play my dad looks like my dad, looks so much like my dad that we could put a photograph next to him and have him refer to the photograph, and when we showed the photograph and saw him, it looked like the same man. I remember sitting in that bar when everyone had left, turning the lights on, and looking around and kind of trying to leap myself back into the past, which was a terrific time for me. Not being able, not just to leap, but not being able to feel within myself some real sense of the nostalgia for that place and that moment. It was a kind of a sad point in my life.
To make a bad time even worse, Don's marriage with Deborah Pratt came to an end. After 5 years of marriage, they divorced.
It was a tough time for them. I think they did an amazing job trying to keep it away from business and not have an influence on us. And oftentimes, you would never suspect that anything like that was going on.
So Belisario is reliving his past and dealing with the present, but he's not about to let Quantum Leap suffer. In Mirror Image, he stuns the fans and reveals a mystery behind the show.
You are the one who's been leaving me, aren't you?
Since day one, Sam has been searching to find out who is leaving him, but only Belisario knows for sure.
I don't know if I can explain that one. That's a mystery. That it was God or time or someone. I didn't have an explanation to it.
Apparently, Don's not going to come clean about the mystery. But one thing we can tell you is that in Mirror Image, the character of Sam Beckett is given a choice. Go home or keep leaping.
Half the fans loved it and half the fans hated it. They wanted to see him go home. And he never did.
Now it's the final day of shooting, and the real cliffhanger is whether or not there will be a sixth season.
It was very much like a closing night, the last day in the theater, when you're out there and you're saying lines for the last time, and even though you've said them for 8 months in a row or whatever, they're the last time, and all of a sudden you're choked up.
Our last wrap day was March 4th, 1993, the day before Dean's birthday. And we came out with this cake. And he blew out big candles, and he looked over at us, and he said, "You know what I wished for? Just one more year." And it was so sad there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Maybe he understood it better than any of us, that he had found a home after so many years of being an orphan in Hollywood. It was his first series. And he knew what it meant to let it go. And that speech that Dean gave really encompassed all that feeling.
Unfortunately, Dean's wish never came true. And after 96 episodes, Quantum Leap was canceled. But Belisario is no dummy, and although some fans didn't like it, remember, he never sent Sam home. Is it possible that Don plans to bring Quantum Leap back? The musical chair game finally got to Quantum Leap. After 4.5 years, the music stopped, and Belisario was left standing alone. The network had pulled the plug.
Warren Littlefield at NBC got it in his head to kill the show, I think. I think Quantum Leap had years to go. And if Brandon had still been around, it would have been on for years more.
I think one of the things that the network was concerned about was had they seen the best, and was it time? And ultimately, that was our conclusion. And that was the final decision that I made, and I accept that responsibility.
If I really could send Sam leaping around, I'd have had him leap back into Warren Littlefield and put right what Warren did wrong.
So Don blames Warren, and Warren's okay with that. But he did ask Sciography to deliver a message.
Don Belisario, I thank you for an outstanding series, one that I personally enjoyed and one that the network absolutely enjoyed. I know the viewers did. Was its life cut short? It probably was, and for that I'm sorry, but I also celebrate the 5 years of great programming that we had together.
Quantum Leap could have gone forever, whether Scott wanted to do it or Dean wanted to do it. It's a perennial because of the kind of stories that they tell.
If Quantum Leap were on today, it would be a real Tiffany show for any network. It would play very much the way X-Files has played successfully for Fox for all these years. And we probably would have been smart if we had kept it in one time period the entire time.
So the network screwed up, but it couldn't stop Quantum Leap from making a mark on television history, and the effects will last a lifetime.
I feel that the years of playing this character cemented for me a lot of my feelings about issues that I come into contact with every day. It cemented a lot of my character that was still forming at the time, and really start to kind of understand a little bit about the kind of man that I wanted to be as I grew older.
I know Don got a letter from a family whose child was dying of cancer. And I don't remember what the show was, but they said that night they realized that they had given up hope, and that show made them hope again. If you can do that, then you're doing television. I think that's what we did on Quantum Leap.
Quantum Leap is very special in my life. It gave me the opportunity to make many friends. It gave me an opportunity to view television as not just entertainment, but as a tool for education, for enlightening.
Things happen for the reasons that they happen, and I truly believe that, like Star Trek, you know, it has a cycle, and it lived its cycle, this first cycle, and I believe Quantum Leap in some form or another will be back.
I'd love to do a Quantum Leap movie, so would Scott and Dean. You know, Universal owns that property. Had I approached Universal on it, they weren't interested. Hopefully at some point they will be.
Well, we talk about it all the time, but everybody's always interested. It's just a question of figuring it out.
Quantum Leap is over for now, but Belisario's time travel experiment has not been forgotten. Who would have thought a small coal mining town called Cokeburg would inspire one of the most successful sci-fi shows of all time? When we come back, find out who has survived and who hasn't. Where have they been? Where are they now? And where are they going? It's time for Sciography Roll Call.
I remember when the pilot got reviewed, I had a critic in the state of Washington somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, who wrote, "He's broken every rule of time travel. This is ridiculous. You can't do a show like this." And I thought, what rules? Who's traveling around in time, folks? It's all made up. Nobody's really out there bouncing around.
People basically want to know, especially in this town, what the show is in one sentence, and you can't do it for them. And I've tried to break it down for years, and I usually just say, ask Dean, and Dean will tell you that it's all about him.
This question's for Dean.
Thank you.
Dean, are you an angel?
Wrong star.
The fans went from passion to death threats over canceling the show. There'd be phone messages, and they started sending lilies. Then it just got angrier. At that point, you say, you know what, get a life, catch these in reruns.
I think, truthfully, in any series, if you look at it, they evolve. And Don was great about letting the writers come in and take chances. And when it went too far, he would go, nah, that's too much. I remember somebody came in and pitched an episode where Al walked through a cow and came out with a glass of milk in his hand. So you needed the rules so that you could go, no, Al can't do that.
I haven't looked at a show in a lot of years, but I know that if I went back and looked at him, I'd just get a great warm feeling and say, God, it was good work.
Enter Sci-Fi World and experience chain reactions of sci-fi's greatest hits. Superhero Land, Creature Land, Intergalactic Land, Fantastic Land, and Inhuman Land. Weekdays from 10 to 4. Part of the summer of sci-fi.